Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for this live webinar session. My name is Mark Newell. I'm part of the marketing team here at Johnson Controls. Before we start, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items. During this webinar today, all attendees will be in listen-only mode. However, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have that come up during the topic today. If you have any questions, please enter them in the questions panel that you'll see in your GoToWebinar menu. We have a team of panelists working in the background that will be able to answer your questions in real time. And we also have some additional time at the end of the session today where we'll be able to go into a bit more detail with any of those questions. Okay, today's webinar will be presented by Megan Roble from Accurex and Adam Walker from Johnson Controls, Ansell. Just a short biography from both presenters there for you to browse. And next, the agenda for today's webinar. Firstly, Megan will present on Accurex ventilation systems with a bit more of an overview of commercial kitchens and codes and standards before handing over to Adam, who will go into a little bit of detail about Ansell restaurant fire suppression technologies and also, again, a little bit on approvals and code compliance. Okay, thank you, everybody. I'll now hand you over to Megan.
All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure my mouse and everything works. Perfect. All right, so I'm sure this is a question that can be easily answered, but wanted to kick it off with, where are commercial kitchens used? They are everywhere. Most commonly, you'll see them standalone restaurants. There's a plethora of restaurants across the nation, internationally. Dining is a big service. But in addition to that, we also can see commercial kitchens in hotels and resorts, hospitals, prisons and correctional facilities, athletic and sports complexes, universities, schools, colleges, malls and shopping centers, office buildings, grocery and convenience stores, and airports. So they are everywhere. Oop. There we go. So what is a kitchen ventilation system? It is not just the hood that you see in the commercial restaurant. A ventilation system also includes an exhaust fan, makeup air unit, exhaust hood with grease filtration when required, grease-rated ductwork when required, controls of some sort, and a fire suppression system when required. Some other systems may include pollution control units, utility distribution systems, and dedicated outdoor air systems. Looking at exhaust fans, the most common exhaust fan that we see used in a kitchen ventilation system is our centrifugal upblast fan. When these fans are used with a Type 1 hood, which is our grease-rated hood, they're required to be grease-rated as well. This rating usually includes a grease trap, hinge kit, an outer wind band height of 40 inches off the roof line, vented curb or vented curb extension, high tent curb seal, and a welded duct to the fan base. Depending on the application, you may also see centrifugal downblast or sidewall fans, utility set, inline, and transfer fans. Just depends on the application. And the main standards that we follow are NFPA 96 and UL 705. Makeup air units are crucial in our KVS systems to replace the kitchen hood's exhausted contaminated air with fresh air. A makeup air unit is key to maintaining airflow balance and proper pressure within the kitchen. With makeup air units, you want to think about comfort. These units can provide tempered air in the kitchen space to keep the staff comfortable while cooking over hot appliances. Typically, 80% of the exhausted air is supplied by a makeup air unit through the air supply plenum of the kitchen hood, which you can see in this image right here. The remaining 20% or slightly less to keep the kitchen negative of the exhausted air may enter through the ceiling diffusers. The makeup air unit works in tandem to push the contaminated air through the kitchen hood while the exhaust fan pulls the contaminated air. And the main standards and codes that we follow are IMC 2015, section 508. Going a little bit deeper into makeup air units, Accurex offers a direct gas with packaged cooling unit. This meets the various application requirements of the market. It meets federal requirements of low global warming potential, or GWP, impact refrigerants, and reduces CO2 emissions. It complies with UL 60335-40 4th edition and ASHRAE 15 safety standards. Direct gas heat is more efficient and has a greater modulation for more precise temperature control. The new packaged cooling has improved cooling performance due to condensing coil efficiency with micro-channel coils. The A2L R454B refrigerants are mildly flammable, but when managed correctly and designed around, they are safe. Our new makeup air units have a smaller footprint with a reduced length and width and a lower weight. Moving on to the exhaust hood types, we have type 1 and type 2 hoods. Type 1 hoods are grease rated versus type 2 are non-grease rated. We're going to focus more around the type 1 hoods today because these hoods require a fire suppression system. Most type 1 hoods are found above appliances such as griddles, fryers, broilers, ovens, ranges, and wok ranges. We follow a variety of codes and standards. The ones that I have highlighted in red directly relate to specific fire codes that we follow. Our type 1 hoods are UL tested and listed to UL 710. This guarantees efficiencies in airflow, filtration, and operation. Our hoods are fully welded and constructed of 300 or 430 series 18 gauge stainless steel. Our performance enhancing lip improves capture and performance of the hood by redirecting the airflow. And to simplify maintenance, the fully sloped grease trough directs captured grease to the grease collection receptacles. Going into airflow requirements, there are requirements per IMC 507.5, where any combination of heavy duty, medium duty, and light-duty cooking appliances are utilized under a single hood, the exhaust rate required by the section for the heaviest duty appliance covered by the hood shall be used for the entire hood. What that means is if you have a broiler heavy-duty appliance and a medium-duty griddle, the exhaust rate must follow the heavy-duty rate for the entire hood. Since our hoods are UL 710 listed, we actually have lower exhaust rates because per IMC 5071, factory-built kitchen exhaust hoods, which are tested in accordance to UL 710, shall not be required to comply with sections, and there's a variety of sections here, but the one I highlighted is capacity of hoods. So you can see, looking at the heavy-duty appliance here, our exhaust rate that we tested to is actually 200 CFM per lineal foot. Doing a simple calculation to compare IMC versus UL, this example here is an 8-foot long wall canopy with an appliance of a gas range, charbroiler, and griddle. The note I have here says because the gas charbroiler is a heavy-duty appliance, the entire 8-foot hood must use the heavy-duty exhaust rate of 400 CFM per IMC or 200 CFM per UL. And again, that is per lineal foot. Translating that, you would take your 400 times 8, and you would get these exhaust CFM rates, depending on IMC or UL. Notice how I underlined minimum. These are the minimum exhaust rates. That doesn't technically mean that it's recommended. The main reason behind that is because these values are lab tested minimums, and hoods designed around these minimum values may not properly capture. Typically, airflow are sized somewhere between the UL minimum and IMC values, depending on overhangs, appliances, etc., while also ensuring there's airflow capacity for balancing. In this example, to properly capture the grease from the cooking appliances, the required CFM rate may range anywhere between 1,600 to 3,200 CFM per linear total. Utilizing an accurate CFM rate reduces the chance of an appliance fire. So you may be asking, why is grease extraction so important? If half of the equation of fire reduction is to exhaust the contaminated air out, then the second half is to extract the grease from the airstream. Restaurant fires are very common, and grease fires can be very serious, potentially spreading through plenums, ductwork, fans, and up to the roof. Inefficient grease filtration increases the frequency of duct cleanings. It also can build up and decrease roof life and appearance. You may also have neighbor complaints. From sidewall exhaust fans, they can cause greasy windows, sidewalks, and buildings if proper filtration isn't present. The idea is capturing as much grease at the hood will reduce fire hazard, reduce the duct cleanings, and increase roof life, etc. So how does grease filters work? Here at Accurex, we have 3 different grease filtration options. Our standard baffle filter removes roughly 28% of grease. We consider this a light duty filter option. This filter works with impaction only, meaning the grease hits the metal surface as the air travels through the plates and is impacted out of the airstream. Next, we have our extractor filter. At about 69% grease removal, we consider this a moderate to heavy grease use. These are centrifugal force-based filters, meaning that the grease is tossed out of the airstream due to the air being spun inside the filter column due to the angle inlet baffle. And lastly, we have the grease grabber filter option. This is 100% efficient at grease removal, and you would use this in a heavy-duty grease application. This is a dual stage filter system that combines the extractor that I previously mentioned with a micro bead filter. This captures high amounts of grease. Filter efficiency is shown here. If you have an improved filter, you can see that the grease buildup is reduced, and this is only in 3 months of full operation. So it doesn't take that long for grease to build up, especially if it's a heavily used hood with a lot of grease production underneath it. The kitchen is cooking burgers on an hourly basis, high level of burger production. So think about that. Depending on the kitchen application, there could be a lot of grease buildup. There are grease-rated ducts. Grease ducts connect the exhaust hood to the exhaust fan. It is specifically regulated ductwork to vent grease-laden and/or flammable vapors from commercial cooking equipment, having numerous requirements regarding construction, maintenance, and inspection. And before I hand this off to Adam, the last slide here is what happens when there's a fire. Per NFPA 96, the exhaust fan must turn on to full speed and the supply fan must turn off. All fuel to the appliances, whether gas or electric, must turn off. To comply, wiring from the fire suppression switch connects to Accurex's main control panel. When the fire suppression system activates, it sends a signal to the Accurex main control panel. The main control panel then sends a signal to the exhaust fan to turn on at full speed and to the makeup air unit to turn off. And I'm going to hand it over to Adam.
Thanks, Megan. Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Walker, and I'm with Johnson Controls, and I'm going to touch briefly on restaurant fire suppression as a whole, and really starting off by explaining two different technologies in relation to fire suppression. So the first one being a standard wet chemical technology. The agent is a standard wet chemical and appliance, manufacturer specific. And there's two different primary technologies with that would be a stored pressure type system or a cartridge operated system. Both of which have an automatic means of actuation, and they essentially trigger in the event of a fire event or a heat event, melting fusible ink detection, or a manual actuation from a pull station. Upon system actuation, it's all or nothing, so the entire system would go off at the same time simultaneously, and it would knock out the fire instantaneously, while it's also creating saponification and the elimination of oxygen so that reflash does not occur. There are fusible link detectors in the mechanical style offerings, and our fusible links are color coded. So they're temperature specific to the application, and the color coding identifies what that temperature is. For easy knowing of what detector is up there, you can pull out the filter, look up and understand what that detector temperature is. As I said, it is a fixed suppression, so they're mounted in the hood. However, we do have a flexible agent distribution hose for appliances that require nozzles and piping to be fixed to it. So it can be moved for cleaning of the restaurant on a regular basis. Our suppression systems are aesthetically pleasing for the kitchen decor. So we do offer stainless steel enclosures so that it blends into the restaurant and it's not sticking out like the pull station you would want to. The agent is a non-corrosive agent, and we do offer in two different designs, which I'll touch on coming up here. All of the fire suppression systems are performance-based, and they meet UL 300 approval, which is a performance-based testing. It's widely recognized, and then we'll touch a little bit later on some regional and global approvals as well. I explained the stainless steel aesthetics that we have for stainless environments like a kitchen. We also have an OEM version, which would mount in an end cabinet of hoods such as Accurex. The other technology to touch on is a dual agent, and this system for ours is called the Piranha system. It essentially operates very similar in relation to the fixed nozzle piping, the pull station for manual actuation, and then the fusible links for automatic actuation. What's different about it is it has the standard wet chemical agent that discharges first and is immediately followed by water for cooling. This relates to a 15 times faster cooling than a conventional single agent wet chemical system. Due to having the multiple agents or water and agent, we see about twice the coverage of a standard chemical agent, 60% less chemical agent required for the same hazard, right? So again, just about twice the coverage. Piranha is only offered in overlapping. Again, I'll touch on what that looks like in a moment. And then because of the less agent, it requires less nozzles and also fewer agent tanks. So a little bit less real estate on the wall. Equally aesthetically pleasing for the environment. So very stainless steel, blends in again, non-corrosive agent. And then we also offer that in a couple different proximity options. So we have high, which is up to 10 foot above the finished floor. We have medium, and then we also have a low proximity for those low profile hood applications. Again, the same for the fusible links, the hose, and then the approvals as well. So these are the three systems that we offer from Johnson Controls. We have the R102 system, which is a standard wet chemical system. And this system is the high runner for us, 95% of the industry's top 100 restaurant chains. It's used in fine and casual dining, stadiums, and hotels. Under the same Ansel brand, we have the Piranha system, which is the dual agent that I just explained. It's used more in the higher risk applications and exclusive to a couple different hotel chains, including Hilton and Marriott. And then we have the Pyrochem brand. That is our stored pressure offering. It again uses a different agent than the prior two. It is popular in a lot of independent restaurants and some chain restaurants. Also very popular in the food truck arena. So when we think about those three different product offerings, we do also have coverage offerings. So When we look at appliance specific, this is essentially where you have dedicated nozzle coverage and agent application per appliance type. So a griddle, a fryer, a range, a wok, all of those would have different appliance coverages, which equates to different nozzle locations, different nozzle types, and then different flow characteristics of those nozzles. This is the most economical layout, as it's using only agent where it's needed. However, any changes to the appliance lineup would require fire suppression changes. The other option that we have is our overlapping coverage. And this essentially has nozzles spaced equally throughout the hood. And this allows you to move the appliances underneath that protected area. There are still limits and maximums of what can be covered under the overlapping scheme. But the value of it is if you have a change of a chef or a different appliance, whatever you need to switch in or out, as long as it falls within that criteria, they can be moved as much as needed and no changes are needed to the suppression system. So this is just a simulation of showing, switching the fryers and the griddle from one side to the other. Appliance coverage did not change. So Piranha increased nozzle height. This was the one that I touched on. And this can go very high so that the nozzles are not visible to the cook. In some instances in restaurants or cooking facilities, they will not want the nozzles to be seen as it might be an open environment. So it's very aesthetically pleasing for those applications. The nozzles can go up to 84 inches above the hazard surface, again, also equating to 10 foot above the finished floor. Reduces the nozzle for any type of, reduces the risk, for any type of nozzle redirection or obstruction. So no accidental hanging of things on the nozzle drops, no pushing them out of the way, none of that as far as a risk. And then it also simplifies hood cleaning and service because you don't have to work around those nozzles. You don't have to clean the nozzle drops. And any of the systems out there today are easily upgradable to this higher height system for Piranha. So you can see this is the image of a standard height, and all of those go away for the increased height. So now you don't see any of those nozzle drops at all with that increased height. Other than the overlapping and appliance specific coverages, we do also have hazard specific coverages. And these are known as appliance specific, where we will fire test an actual appliance brand model per the request of the market, the end user, the OEM. And essentially what that offers us to do is dial in the most economical coverage per the specific requester. So if they want a nozzle in a certain location, we can test in that specific location and get the most economical amount of agent that we need for the application. We're not then needing to test a blanket coverage, right, for every manufacturer's type of that model or style of cooking. If it's a wood-fueled broiler, then we would test that one model. We would get an appliance specific coverage that is most ideal for the user of that appliance. And then in the left image, you can see the higher height application where you essentially do not see any nozzle drops at all, utilizing the Piranha higher height coverage. Some other hazard specific applications that we have is pollution control units. So there's various manufacturers, including Accurex, GreenHack, who has pollution control units. And we worked closely with Accurex on coverage schemes to make the most economical coverage and nozzle layout that is doable in their facility. When you see a pollution control unit, these are secondary filtration equipment. and they are required to be covered per the AHJ's instruction and local code enforcement. These are a coverage by coverage, project by project basis, and also model by model. So in the case of an Accurex instance, we have developed coverage schemes for their various models, and we can offer that coverage recommendation upon request for coverage of various models. There is not a blanket coverage, and it is filter by filter evaluated. All the various filter types require different coverages, whether it be a pre-filter, a bag filter, an electrostatic precipitator, a HEPA filter. All of those different filter types require different nozzle arraignments, and so any of them, just reach out to our technical services group, and we'll be more than happy to assist in any type of coverage designs and recommendations. Some of our global approvals, so this is a snapshot of, UL 300 does not do it for the entire globe. And we take approvals and sound engineering very serious. So we go after all of the regional approvals where applicable. And you can see that we have various fire test approvals ranging from Canada, the US, Europe, the Middle East, Ukraine, Russia, China, South Korea, and Japan. We also have various marine approvals, which also require those fire testing to be occurred. So none of this is an easy effort. There's a lot of investment, a lot of testing to ensure that we're meeting all of the applicable standards globally. Some of the local standards that we comply with would be NFPA 96, which is the standard for ventilation, control, and fire protection of commercial cooking operations. In this standard, although it's essentially a ventilation standard, there is a specific chapter relating to fire suppression. And in that standard, it identifies what the various types of equipment are that need coverage, and then just certain requirements around fire suppression as a whole. The other standard relating more specifically to fire suppression would be NFPA 17A, which is the standard for wet chemical extinguishing systems. And this standard specifically applies to the design, the installation, operation, testing, and maintenance of pre-engineered wet chemical fire extinguishing systems. Please understand that service is absolutely critical, and systems need to be properly serviced. We've seen earlier in the presentation, depending on the filter type, you can experience higher grease and grease buildup. All of these things lead into proper maintenance and reducing the risk around the fire suppression and just the risk as a fire in whole. What can be done to ensure that the system continues to provide the protection expected? Make sure that we do those semi-annual services, make sure that we're doing our monthly inspections, and also the 12-year inspection and maintenance. All of these things are important, vital, and key to maintaining a restaurant fire suppression system's integrity and ensuring that it will be there to work when called upon. Some of the standards that we do test to, so this is more around, how to test, the specific requirements on how appliances are set up, how we run the test, and what's required for the certain approvals. Some of those accredited documents, witness facilities are UL 300, UL 1254, which relates to the mechanical side of the fire testing, UL 199, UL 197 and 710B, UL 1046 and 710. Many of these are ANSI standards, which mean they're used by many third-party testing facilities. And I'll touch on some of those in a minute. UL 300 specifically, a lot of us in the restaurant industry and restaurant fire suppression industry have heard of and might be familiar with what UL 300 is. UL 300 is the standard that identifies how to test specific appliances and relates more specifically to the fire testing of those appliances. So it's going to identify the appliance types, fryers, tilt braising pans, griddles, ranges, broilers of many different types and fuels, and then woks. So it lays out a generic type of appliance coverage for each of them. Then also the ventilation equipment for filtration, ductwork, what those lengths are, how to test them, and then also the hazard-specific coverages that I touched on. So anything that doesn't fall in the first two bullets will typically fall into the hazard-specific. Those are appliances that you want to have a more efficient coverage on, maybe a more specific nozzle location, or maybe something with an obstruction. And then there's non-conventional equipment that can be tested to UL. So you can bring any of those appliances that don't fall in the first three bullets. And UL, how do we test this? The approval agency is put together a test plan and come out with a full-scale test plan to validate the coverage is adequate should that system be called upon. That is the end of the fire suppression presentation. Do we have any questions out?
Okay, thanks, Adam. Yeah, I'm just looking at the questions tab now. There's people asking if the presentation will be shared. Yes, in the coming days, we will be sharing this deck with everybody. There'll be an email being sent to all attendees. Okay, let me pick one question. Can you confirm that UL 710 listings do not require or include the UL 300 fire suppression system? UL 710B does include the suppression system with recirculatory hoods, but is the fire system required as part of a standard UL 710 listing? I'm not sure, Adam or Megan, who'd best pick that up, but maybe Adam.
I cannot confirm that, but I could follow up with an answer for you. 710B, yes, it includes everything in the ventilation, the suppression, and the appliance, but I would like to validate on the 710.
It does look like Travis has put a response in the chat as well. Travis, I don't know if you'd like to maybe add to Adam's response.
Sure. So technically, the fire suppression is not required in a UL 710 listed hood. UL 710 is mostly around the construction or the the design of the hood. So we test clearances, overhang, what gauge stainless are we using? Is it NFPA 96 compliant? Also, we're testing the performance and then the fire safety, as in the ability to meet fire safety requirements. So you could have a type 1 hood with a bunch of appliances in there that technically do not require fire suppression. We see that all the time. Usually it's ovens. Although most of the time an oven wouldn't require a fire suppression system because it's completely enclosed, a code official may say, hey, you're cooking chicken wings in there. It may have some grease, escaping from the back, building up in the plenum. So we want to cover the exhaust plenum and the duct. So that's mostly what the UL 710 encompasses.
Okay, thank you. We have another question asking if we can recommend a portable fire extinguisher to supplement the fire suppression system.
I'm sorry, Mark, it broke out at the beginning. Could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Could we recommend a portable fire extinguisher to supplement the system?
Portable fire extinguishers. So we do have a K-class fire extinguisher on various brands, and that is used as a secondary means of fire suppression. So the system would be the primary means of fire suppression, and the extinguisher then as a backup.
Okay, and another one asking, can I expand the system if my kitchen needs expansion in the future?
Absolutely. So fire suppression system changes occur every day, and that occurs for many different reasons. It could be a remodel, it could be an expansion, an add of a hood, it could be changes of appliance types. And all of those things typically will require modification to the existing fire system. And so sometimes there will be enough agent available in the tank or on the system, right? You're allowed so many nozzles and flow points per system. If there's not enough available, then an extra tank might need to be added, but that would be just an expansion to the system. So yes, you can.
Okay, more on the fire suppression system. So during a fire system maintenance or system discharge, can the systems be refilled in the field, or do the tanks need to be thrown away and new tanks purchased from the manufacturer?
The tanks do not need to be thrown away and disposed of. The agent tanks have a service life, and at the end of their service life, they can be hydrostatically tested to recertify them for another service life. So depending on where in the globe this is located, in the United States and many other countries, the agent tanks have a 12-year service life, and then a rehydro test in another 12 years, and so on and so forth. In Europe, those numbers come down to 10 years.
Okay, thank you. Another one, can you explain the difference between UL and ETL listings? Is one better than the other, or why is one chosen over the other?
So I had touched on many of the standards being ANSI standards. ANSI standards mean that is a test standard that can be used by any accredited laboratory. ETL and UL, as well as many other global accredited laboratories, use those standards, those ANSI standards. So in theory, those test protocols and processes to get a UL or a BSI or a ETL approval should be following the same protocols laid out in the ANSI standards.
Okay, one more question just come in. Are all portable wet chemical fire extinguishers compatible with the saponified blanket the wet chemical agent forms?
They are not all compatible with one another. We have tested the compatibility of ours, and we know that the Insulin Pyrochem brand agents, including Piranha, are compatible with one another. But no, they are not compatible, or it's not a blanket compatibility across the market.
Okay, that appears to be most of the questions at the moment. As I say, we have tried to reply to those in real time directly to people, and we will. We have a record of all the questions with who raised them, so we can respond individually after the call. Don't see anything else currently. But okay, nope, I think that's everything. So just to remind everybody, you will receive a copy of the content that has been presented today. So please look out in your inbox in the coming days. Okay, no more questions coming in. So I'd just like to thank everybody for attending today. Greatly appreciated your time. So thank you, and I'll close things off.